Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Hi, Govin here. Before we dive in, I want to let you know that you're listening to a special edition of Paper Napkin Wisdom, the Freedom Framework series built around a new book by Michael Walsh. In this series, Michael and I explore what it really takes to build a business that works for you, not the other way around. We're talking about freedom in your business, freedom from your business, and freedom because of your business. We'll talk about what each of those things mean. Each episode brings you tools, insights, and in-depth conversation between Michael and I about how to bring this kind of freedom into your life. If you're ready to design a business that you don't need to escape from, you're in the right place. Listen in.
Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we share pearls of wisdom shared by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers. Here's your host, Govin Jayaraman.
Hi, I'm Govin Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode 247. And today we're diving into part 3 of our special Freedom by Design series with Michael Walsh. If you've ever found yourself wondering how to scale your leadership without sacrificing connection, or how to build a culture where people feel aligned, seen, and supported, then this conversation might feel like it was just made for you. Michael is the founder of Walsh Business Growth and the author of a great new book called Freedom by Design, a transformational guide for established business owners who want to grow, make an impact, and rediscover their joy. In this episode, Michael shares a hand-drawn napkin that looks deceptively simple, just a grid of 100 dots. But what it represents is nothing short of exponential. You're going to see how relationships, not just systems or strategies, are the real engine of scale. And you might be surprised at how quickly things can change when you design with intention. So ask yourself, what if the freedom you're seeking is already within reach, waiting to be activated by one intentional relationship at a time? Let's dive in. Michael Walsh, welcome back to Paper Napkin Wisdom. Excited to have you back again today.
Well, thank you. Excited to be back.
Well, Michael, for you listening, if it happens to be your first time here with Michael and I, this is part of a series. Michael has been a frequent guest on Paper Napkin Wisdom because he has these great insights that are tools for leaders of a variety of sizes of organizations. And we're going to get into the size issue in a second, but a variety of sizes of organizations that you can use. And so Michael generously agreed to come back and discuss some of these concepts with us because they're so important. Today's napkin is kind of like a light bright, right? If you remember the old childhood toy light bright with all the rows of lights. So he's got a grid of circles. So imagine in your mind 10 circles all in a row, up and down. So a grid of 10 by 10, all of them filled in. So there's 100 circles on this napkin. And in the bottom right, there's a little smiley face. One of the big circles is a big smiley face, and it says you. And then there are lines attaching that to the immediately neighboring box lights. So that it makes a little square with little X pattern in it. So it's this light bright with the 4 bottom lights, let's say, connected together with a happy face, one of them representing you. Why did you share that with me?
Okay, so to answer your question, can I take a step back?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so what I do, as you know, is I actually help people grow companies. And one of the things, growth of a business can be a very exciting time. And the first thing that everybody looks at is they want to get to $1 million. everyone wants to get to $1 million. And if you're in the UK, you want to get to £1 million. And if you're in Mexico, you want to get to 1 million pesos, and then that takes 10 minutes. So pesos not quite as valuable, but they've got their equivalents to that. And in fact, I was working with a company in South Africa, and they wanted to get to their equivalent of $1 million. They said, we want to get, this is how many of their currency equals $1 million US, and they wanted to make sure they were at $1 million US. Like, okay. So one of the things that people don't realize is there are dynamics that play beneath growth that makes it harder. And one of those dynamics is when you add people, it changes the game. So I drew this little diagram, or what we're now going to call the light bright diagram. Thanks for that moniker. If you take a look, if there's 4 people, a little 2x2 grid. Okay. And you look at, well, how many one-on-one relationships there are there? And of course, the answer to that is 6. There are 6.
So I want you to think about this. This 2x2 grid represents 4 people. So 2 by 2, there are 4 light brights, 4 people involved. And most people would say, okay, what do you mean? What do you mean there are, I want people to understand this concept because it won't be intuitive to everybody listening. So I want you to make a box in your mind, 4 corners on that box. Then you draw a line all the way around it, right? So all the way around it, that's 4 lines, right? So one at the top, the right-hand side, the bottom, and the left-hand side, that's 4 one-on-one relationships. And then you draw an X across the middle, connecting the last 2 people, and that's 2 more relationships. So that's what you're talking about. 6 total relationships, one-on-one relationships between those 4 dots, those 4 people, correct?
Right. So if I put names on the dots, so let's say there's you and me, and there's Sally and Monica. Okay. 4 of us. Okay. So how many one-on-one relationships do I have? Well, me and Sally, me and you, me and Monica. There's 3.
Right.
There's you and Monica.
Yep.
You and Sally. Now we're up to 5. Well, then there's also Sally and Monica.
That's 6.
So that's the 6 relationships. So with 4 people, there's actually 6 one-on-one relationships that exist. Now, when I go from a 2x2 grid, which is 4 people, to a 3x3 grid, which is 9 people, okay, it jumps from 6 to 36 one-on-one relationships. And when I go from 9 to 16, a 4x4 grid, okay, it jumps from 36 relationships to 120. So I've got 6.
So we've only increased. This is an important thing. We've only increased the scale, the number of people in the organization from 4 to 16, right?
Correct.
12 more people, right?
Yep.
Which is significant. It's significant growth. It's 4x, right? That's big growth. But it's only 12 more people, but it's 114 more relationships one-on-one.
Correct.
It's
because Sally's got different relationships and you've got different relationships. Monica's got different relationships. I got different relationships. You start adding all the one-on-one relationships up. Now we're up to 120. Now, a 16-person company, think about this. 8 to 10 people is probably $1 million in sales if it's straight service-based.
Yeah.
16 people, you're probably approaching $2 million. But now you're dealing with 120 one-on-one relationships.
correct.
Okay. Now, if I just think of this, if I got a 4x4 grid, okay, it's interesting because it leads to what I think is an interesting question, but then again, I've been told that I'm a little different. When you look at communication, what's more important, what people say or their nonverbals?
Well, I think what's more important is what's understood.
Okay, so which could you believe if you see inconsistencies between what people say and how they're operating or how they're acting in their nonverbals? Which can you count on?
Nonverbals.
100% of the time.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, yeah.
And look for people listening, it's the difference between saying these same words. What are you thinking? Right? And you can say them, hey, what are you thinking? And I'm leaning into Michael now and saying, well, what are you thinking? Versus, what are you thinking? Same things, but my arms crossed, set it back, cross look on my face conveys a very different message with those same 3 words, right?
Yep. Or I could say, you're bad. or I could go, you're bad.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, and so one has disdain, the other one has like, I don't know,
Admiration
it's
almost.
like, yeah, it's like I'm in the presence of greatness here, same words.
Yep.
Okay, so nonverbals count, and when I think of this little grid, because we continue it on by up to 10 by 10, but when I think of this little grid, I think of Game of Thrones.
Mm.
Okay, somebody comes up to me, is talking to my face, and then there's two people that are buddies of that person that circle behind me, and that's where I get stabbed in the back. I mean, I had to laugh because when my daughter was watching Game of Thrones as it was coming out and everything like that, the biggest thing she had was, not what happens in the story, it's how many people died today. I mean, every single episode, the question is, it's not whether people are going to die, it's who this week, right? So, but that speaks to the nonverbal stuff, because you could actually act like everything's fine and dandy, but it's the nonverbals that'll tell the story. So if I take this beyond 4x4, so if I go to 5x5, if I go to 25 people, okay, remember at 4x4, at 16 people, I was at 120 one-on-one relationships. At 25 people, I'm at 300 relationships. Now, I've got that.
That's 9 more people.
Yeah.
And we've gone up by 180.
Yeah, like more than double with 9 people. So we haven't doubled the number of people, but we've actually more than doubled the number of one-on-one relationships. Now, if I double the number of relationships again and go from 25 people to a 50-person company, which is about a $6 or $7 million company, it's about 50 people, it's about, that's about right. It goes from 300 relationships at 25 people to 1,225 relationships at 50 people.
Yeah. So the complexity is just mind-boggling, right?
Yeah, it's exponential. And then if
this is the other thing. Like, you've been through a lot of these companies at various sizes, from small solopreneur almost to organizations that have got several hundred people, right?
This message is brought to you by Apple Card. Hey, did you know you can get up to 3% daily cash back on every purchase you make with Apple Card? It's not a complicated point system. Just unlimited daily cash back on every purchase. No waiting for rewards and no limits on where you can use your daily cash. Use it on food, shopping, travel. The choice is yours. As an added benefit, you can even choose to let your daily cash grow over time by opening a high-yield savings account through Apple Card. Visit apple.co/card calculator today and discover just how much daily cash you can earn. That's apple.co/card calculator. Subject to credit approval, savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings in Apple Card by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch, member FDIC. Terms and more at applecard.com.
Right.
Let's be clear. We're talking about a $7 or $8 million business around 50 people. What are the likelihood that those 50 people actually all know each other?
They do. If you're in the same location, they know each other.
Yeah.
Now, when you get to 100 people, somewhere between 75 and 100, you'll find that the owners stop knowing everybody. And it's interesting because you've got a dynamic there, because the owners are no longer, Govind or Monica or Debbie or Michael or Sally or whoever. The owners are this thing called the source of pain and the source of good things. So I have to get their approval if I want the good things, if I want to raise, or if I want, my project funded or whatever. But I also have to behave, because it's like if I cross them, I may be on their bad side. Next thing you know, I somehow I got in the doghouse, and I'm not quite sure how. So the owners and the senior leaders literally stop being people and start being things. And it's fascinating to see.
Somewhere around 75 to 100. Somewhere between
75 and 100. By the time you're at 100, it's there. Now, is there any surprise? No. Let's take a look at this. At 25 people, I had 300 one-on-one relationships. At 50 people, again, a little $6 or $7 million company, I have 1,225 one-on-one relationships. By the time I get from 50 to 100, my 1225 just went to almost 5,000. The actual number is 4,950. And again, it's all on the little napkin. So I go from, 25 people at 300 to 50 people, 1,225, 100 people. I've got almost 5,000. No wonder the seating plan at the wedding is such a nightmare. Right. I can't put Jerry next to Mrs. McGillicuddy. She'll talk his ear off, and I will hear about it for months. I mean, things like that happen all the time. It's like, it's crazy just how complex this thing is.
Right. So no, and this is why I think that for a lot of people growing companies or growing organizations, they run into these like invisible walls. They feel like they come out of nowhere. This could be one of the reasons, right?
In fact, it's part of the reason. It's absolutely part of the reason.
Mm.
And it's a part that people overlook. Remember when we talked in our last episode, we talked about the danger zone. So what are the underlying issues that people aren't aware of or they don't know about, but that exist? Once you get past 1 million, what are each of the milestones of growth? Well, there's a milestone at 2 million. If I've achieved 1, I'm going for 2. If I've achieved 2, I go for 5. If I've achieved 5, I go for 10. If I've achieved 10, I go for 20 million. And literally, those are the milestones that most people pick on, as far as that's concerned. But under 2, as you approach 2, there's these underlying issues that occur. It's because I'm used to running with 8 or 10 people. Now I'm up to 15 or 16. Okay. And at 15 or 16 people, at 16 people, I got 121 relationships. And if you take a look at this, Govind, I mean, you and I have a business relationship where we're connecting. We're doing these little paper napping things. You have your business. I help different people in businesses. Our relationship. Do you control our relationship?
No.
Do I control our relationship?
No.
Correct. So there's you, there's me. And there's this thing between us that neither one of us controls, but both of us have an influence on, this thing called the relationship.
Yep.
So where the business actually lives is in these relationships. So if I've got a 100-person company, I've got 5,000 of these things, or 4,950, I don't want to exaggerate, 5,000 of these little things called relationships that nobody controls.
Right.
Okay.
It feels like, time to toss
it's
in
like,
I just want to scream because it's true. And, the thing that I've always, there are all these things, these leadership edicts that people talk about how you control these things. You need to control. These are the controls on your business. Mm-hmm. But we just talked about the core of it not being something that anybody controls.
Correct.
So, like, seriously, what do you do? What do you do?
There's 2 answers. And the first one is the obvious answer that everybody knows and many go to. Single malt scotch.
I was going to say panic. I was going to say, Japanese whiskey works really well in those situations.
Hey, Hibiki, I'll take it anytime. Or, Yamazakura, whatever. That's fine. But the other alternative, is to
for those of you listening, Yamazaki 18 is my favorite. Just letting everybody know.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Yeah. If anybody wants to give them a holiday gift at any time, you now know what to send over.
Exactly.
I'm just looking at my bottle of that, just sitting over there. My wife and I have a little, nip every now and then. The other thing is, how do people answer this question? Okay. Because power and management have shifted over the ages. And before the industrial age, power was based on wealth, and wealth was based on land ownership. That's why you had kings and queens and barons, and and actually the church also had, but it was land ownership because that's where they had the resources and they could actually, their wealth was based on the ability to feed themselves, get work off the land and things like that. And
that's where the word title comes from, right? I mean, title is relates strictly to deeds, and you have title as a result of that.
And just like you also have title as a king or as a queen. I mean, there's title. Right. So they are synonymous. I never thought of that before, but it's a really good point. But when the Industrial Revolution occurred, what happened was that the business owners, the capitalists, it was a different way of wealth. Okay, so they had wealth, and so power was actually associated. It got expanded to people that owned the businesses, and there was management before you got to the Industrial Revolution, but the management was based on apprenticeship model. So you're the boss, I'm your helper. I do all the Joe jobs. And you teach me the profession, whether it's architecture, engineering, medicine, blacksmith. It doesn't matter what the profession. You would teach me the 6 different things I need to know at this time as I work through my evolution of becoming an expert in that particular field. Now, when you go to the industrial revolution, assembly lines and things like that started to show up. And so what happened was that, if there's 20 journeymen that each bring their apprentices, then you're in a situation where everybody was teaching their people different ways. So you were teaching me one way, but somebody else might be teaching their people a different way. So what happens is, and I'm doing things one way and the other apprentices are doing things different ways. It makes for a lumpy assembly line. So everybody has to do the things the same way. And so what happened was that management started to take control over the process. Rather than teaching the apprentice how to do things, they reduced it down to one job here, one job there. And they took control from the workers so that they could actually manage this because they needed things to run smoothly. And I got to tell you, it worked really, really well from an economic perspective. Productivity went through the roof. I mean, at Bethlehem Steel, they went from cutting and processing 9 linear feet of steel per minute to 50 feet per minute. In a matter of
that's the value of specialization. But I mean, that's what they talked about, right?
But it was because of uniformity that they all were doing it the same way. So what happened was the net effect on employees is it turned them into cogs in the system. This is also when unions came up because people didn't like it. They were being treated like machinery.
Because they were replaceable in that model.
Yeah. And so as long as I've got consistency of inputs and consistency of outcomes, that's exactly what happens. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, we've continued to grow and evolve, and we're past the Industrial Revolution. Now we're in the information age. In fact, we're in the information age has morphed into a networked world. And it's interesting because with AI and things like that, they're saying, well, yeah, but information is now ubiquitous. It's there for everybody at all times. What's being predicted is over the next decade to 2 decades, it's going to shift from even the information age. It's almost like it's being complete when all the information that's available is available at our beck and call. We're still working it out, but over the course of the next, say, 20 years, it'll be the age of creativity. In other words, what you do with it. It's not the information itself that actually gives the power. It's the people who are creative in their use of that actually can make a difference. And there's already people showing up that do that, and it'll continue to evolve however it does. But the back to the thing, management it went from learn from the master apprenticeship to command and control. You do what I say, I withhold the information. You just learn your job because that way you'll actually do it because I need to have you conform. But now we're into the information age and a network world, and moving on from that, you're in a situation where I need people's brains. In the industrial age, if it was just manual labor, you could hold a gun to my family's head saying, Michael, you have to do this. Lift that rock or make sure you're loading this assembly line this way. And I would literally do it. But if you actually use the same version of force and coercion on me when I'm a knowledge worker, whether it's a skilled trade, whether it's a professional service, whether it's somebody in healthcare, whether it's somebody in even in training and development, you hold a gun to somebody's head and go, be creative. The brain just doesn't work that way. I'm like, he's going to kill my family. He's going to, and my creativity goes away. So I have no access to that. So what's happened is the power is actually shifting away from the people, the management, and all of a sudden things like prescribed power that people relied on. Okay, because I'm the boss, you're the employee, you have to do what I say. Doesn't fly anymore. And you're in a situation where now you need my creativity at the table. You actually have to be nice to me, because if I feel safe and I feel good and I want to participate, that's when my creativity is available. Will I still operate the other way? Sure, because I need the paycheck. But I got to tell you, if you can actually tap my creativity, or you can tap my lateral thinking, or whatever it is that my specialty, then I'm in a different spot. So it leads itself to the question, which is a business more a well-oiled machine, or is it morphing now in?
This message is brought to you by Apple Card. Apply for Apple Card today and start earning up to 3% daily cash back on everyday purchases. And that daily cash can even grow automatically when you open a high-yield savings account through Apple Card. What are you waiting for? Visit apple.co/card calculator today to see how much daily cash you can earn. Subject to credit approval. Savings available to Apple Card owners. Subject to eligibility. Savings in Apple Card by Goldman Sachs Bank USA. Member FDIC. Terms and more at applecard.com.
Into this thing called an intelligent ecosystem. And it's
Well, you know, one
interesting.
of the things that before we go too far, because there's so much in what you just said, you talked about how you can't just sort of yell at somebody to be creative, right? And I actually wonder about that a little bit because I actually think that a creative always thinks creatively. So yes, they will be creative, but if you scare the crap out of them and you say be creative, they'll be creative at the Maslow level that would best serve them emotionally at that time. So if you're threatening their safety and saying be creative, they'll absolutely be creative as it relates to their safety, not the organization's safety, their safety. If you empower them and leave them enlightened, acknowledged, appreciated, if you create the structure that supports that self-actualization, they'll be creative at the highest level, right?
Right.
So the creatives will be creative, but what we do to them forces where they force that creative energy. And if we're going to make creatives creative about their own survival, they'll be walking out the door pretty fast, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, how sustainable is that? So you may yell at me and I may do the stuff because I just want you to stop yelling at me because I hate it when you yell at me. And now to get me to do something tomorrow, guess what you're going to have to do again?
Yeah. Yell at me louder, and
Yeah.
I will have come up with ways for you not to yell at me. Because
And one way is to just turn my feet in a different direction.
exactly.
So you just get
Or fake lie and hide. So going back to these one-on-one relationships, I'm again, neither of us are in control, but I've become disengaged with it.
correct.
And that breaks one of the chains.
Well, you hate being a manager because you have to yell at this guy who's just not acting unless you yell at him. And I hate working with you because I don't like getting yelled at.
Right.
People really go, oh, I get to get yelled at today. Oh, great. I got to get
Yeah.
Nobody does that I know of. There
Yeah.
may be one or two, the exception makes a rule, but that's usually not how it goes, right? So it's interesting because with the evolution of how both power and management have worked, prescribed power really doesn't have a place. But people say, so then you ask the question, is a business more of a well-oiled machine? Okay. Or is it more of an intelligent ecosystem? I got to tell you, a lot of people will either say well-oiled machine because they go, the structures are here to stay. People come, they go, but the structures are here to stay. And it's like, okay. The other side of it is if I look at a well-oiled machine, at least I have the feeling like I have some control. In other words, if you're part of the machinery, I feel like I have some control of that. Now, here's another question that I have to ask. If you have a machine, so do you have a car?
Yeah.
Okay, car's a machine. Who's the car for?
My teenagers.
Well, that's true. Okay, who has a consequence if you don't let the teenagers take the car?
Yeah, the adults in the room, right? So
Right. So if you own a car, if your family owns a car, the car is for your family, but it's the car is the thing for you.
yes.
So it's either for you personally, if you're, let's say you lived alone, it'd just be for you. If it's for you and your family, the car is for you and your family.
Yep.
If I'm a cog in the machine, the car's not for me.
Correct.
It's for you.
Correct.
It's for the owners of the car.
Correct.
Okay, so if a business is a machine, the business is there for whoever owns the business.
Mm-hmm.
If the people are cogs in that system, it's not there for them, it's for the owners of the business. Now, in an ecosystem, who's an ecosystem for?
All of the participants.
Everybody. So it includes me as an owner,
Yeah.
But it includes everybody who works in it. It's got to serve everybody.
It has to. By definition,
Yeah.
it has to serve all of the constituents of the ecosystem. Everybody lives in harmony with each other.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I have a bunch of questions around that. So the first one is, for whose benefit is this machine built? Okay, it's for the owners of the machine, whoever they happen to be. And in your case, it's for you and your family, and in particular with a large emphasis on your teenagers, right?
They will tell us.
And every now and then, you and your wife actually get to use the car every now and then as well. It's like, if you're good to them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And hopefully it comes back in one piece. Okay, depends on their learning curve on how they're driving so far, and things like that. So when you look at the ecosystem, all participants within the ecosystem, as well as any stakeholders, as well, the owners, the managers, the employees, the clients, the suppliers, like everybody. Okay. And then the other question is who's in control
and the machine, and I want to go back. The machine we're talking about is the company, the organization, is the business, right? So
that thing that has 100 people with 5,000 relationships.
Exactly, right? I don't want people to lose sight of that and think that we're thinking about the assembly plant. No, we're talking about the whole thing, the whole business.
Pick a business, pick a sector, pick a type of business, a service-based business.
Let's pick an event planning organization.
Okay. So if you have an event planning organization, it's got 50 employees, and they work in a couple of different cities, and they actually help. In fact, there's a client that I've worked with that does in fact do that, and they're here on the west coast of Canada, and they actually do a lot of events in Vancouver. They do events up at Whistler. They actually bring people to Banff or Jasper, in Alberta as well. So there's a lot of, and then they actually take some people down to San Francisco, down the west coast. So in fact, and there's about 50 people, and because it's services, but they also actually sell like the programs and stuff like that. Even though it's a services based business, they're actually at about like $15 million a year. And the reason is because you're actually having to pay to get the participants into these venues and stuff. So it's not just their services; it's their services combined with a purchase. So that's a great example. Okay, and so. The question's who's in control of it? If that business was a machine, who'd be in control of it?
The owner.
Right. So the owner or the owners, okay, and the senior leaders, by proxy, okay.
Yeah.
Under the direction of the owners. Now the staff operate it, but they follow the directions of the managers and the senior leaders, at the behest of the owners. If you looked at that same thing as an ecosystem, nobody actually exerts daily or weekly control. It's more or less self-regulating. Okay. Now, especially if I have more senior people, but even if I've got some more junior people, there's training and development. The systems, once an ecosystem is up and going, the owners and the top leaders, they'll decide who works there. Let's not kid ourselves. But the operations are left to the teams of knowledge workers. Okay. And those teams include the respective managers. The manager's there as a member of the team. Okay. The owner always has a 51% vote. But at the same time, the owner never uses it because they actually have built the thing in such a way so that people do it. So if I've got the team that actually is going to take a group of people to Whistler for that, that event, well, there's getting people up there on the bus. Then there's actually doing, I don't know, let's call it a ski holiday or whatever. They have a retreat. Then there's people doing that. If somebody else is doing stuff in Vancouver, you've got a whole different team doing that. I need the teams to work with each other, and the managers will assist, but they facilitate the growth of the team, because I promise you, when things go wrong, and they always do, especially in the event management company, because you can't predict everything, then somebody has to figure out how to deal with it. And you can't just rely on the boss. You need everybody to be aware of things as far as that's concerned.
So here's a really important thing. I want to go back to, you said self-regulating. Self-regulating doesn't mean not regulated, doesn't mean do what you want. It means that we as leaders within the organization have set a culture and framework, provided training, support, and leadership. So there are guidelines that people understand. We've got great people in great seats with great support, so that they are enabled and empowered to regulate it themselves rather than only fill widgets or be a cog in this other machine. They're bringing their creative mind to problem solving when necessary. Not
because they need to use that creative mind, because a system won't solve the issue of the day.
Correct.
Now, so if you had to look at the distinguishing factor,
and won't solve because it can't scale. That system, that control system, can't scale in a services business to that level, or in any business, I contend, to that level, without actually getting good people to make good choices and put their hearts into it.
Right. And the difference is, if I treat my business, my event planning business in this case, as a machine, then the systems are paramount and the people are there to follow the systems. If I treat that as same event planning company as an intelligent ecosystem, I need the intelligence of the people. Instead of having to work the systems, I actually have people at work, and the systems, you still need systems every step of the way, but the systems are there to serve the people, not to run the company, and the people have to fall in line. Back in the industrial age, when they had assembly lines, you follow the assembly line. In a services business, you don't have uniform outcomes. There are many ways to get things right, and there's also many ways to get things wrong. So you really do need the smarts of the people at play. And so the key is, instead of putting a system in to try to constrain or control behavior to try to get people to do what I need them to do, I'm putting in systems that support them so that they're able to bring their best. And I trust that as they continue to be trained and grown and evolved and all that stuff in their careers, we actually work with them so that they can bring their best. And then the systems and structures, you still need them just as much as you need them in a machine. But the difference is they're there to serve the people rather than there to constrain or control the people. And because if I'm constraining and controlling people, I'm turning them into cogs. If I'm supporting the people, I'm getting the X factor of any business, which is the power of those people. Because if I can tap the power of the people, I got to tell you, profitability goes up, your freedom in your business goes up. The freedom there's tons of freedom for everybody if that happens. And primarily the owners and leaders, the levels of freedom are far richer, and the employees have a far more higher levels of satisfaction in the business as well.
Yeah, so I like to talk about this as being, the top-down organization structure where the leaders are at the top and everybody else is at the bottom.
Yep.
Is the command and control style. I say, you do, and most of the time everything's lost in translation. The other side is like the leaders are at the bottom supporting an organization which fills the void. So think of it as a V versus a pyramid, and
Yep.
and what you do with the V is you've got the supportive structures, tools, frameworks, and understanding the ability to learn, solve, and adjust in public, the transparency tools, so that the value of this is, think about it this way, when a small organization learns something,
Mm-hmm.
it has the potential for that information to spread amongst that small group more tightly. But when
By word of mouth.
By word of mouth. But however, when you play a game of telephone and there's more than 3 or 4 people in, what happens to the message? It gets diluted. So you need support structures to make sure that the right message is properly conveyed all the way through transparently to everyone. So when we learn, solve, and adjust, we learn, solve, and adjust at scale. So, 4,950 people can get the same or at least very similar message.
Or 4,950 relationships. Remember, there's only 100 people.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Relationships.
The other side. So I mostly agree with what you said, but there's one part that I'd actually adjust. Okay. So you said top down versus bottom up. Mm-hmm. What I would do is turn it on its side. See, the employee is not more important than the boss. The boss is not more important than the employee. They each have different roles, and both are needed in an ecosystem. So by turning it on the side, I put the customers over here, and the employees are really the front face to the customer. But everybody has to work with each other. So I'd still do the exact same thing, but instead of having the boss drive it, the boss does get to say who plays, but the other side of it is they have to work together with each other. So, and the difference here would be, instead of you have to do it because I'm the boss and you're my employee, I say, I have been around the block on this. Would you like a little support on that? And then you're like, yeah, I heard he's done this a lot. Maybe we should get his opinion. It's like, well, this is just my opinion. I'm interested in what your thoughts are on it. But one possibility might, in other words, I can train from the credibility of my experience rather than dictating because I know better than you.
And isn't that when leading becomes more coaching and support than hierarchical leadership, right? And that's where even the teammates can lead each other. I mean, really, for lack of a better word, or more just for illustrative purposes, an employee could support and coach a leader if the framework was well understood. Correct?
Yep. And I just hesitate to use the term coaching because it's so overused by everybody for everything. It's like, I don't even know what it means anymore. But it's people, it's people working with each other and collaborating and stuff. And sometimes training is needed. So you give people access to the training, and I'll use something like mentoring as well, or and I know that we're just playing, with different words, but coaching does apply. The only thing is it's so overused these days that nobody knows what it means anymore.
Yeah. No.
Everybody's got to be a coach.
Everybody's got a
So I'm going to be the boss, but I'm going to call myself a coach. So that when I tell you what to do, I'm going to claim that I'm coaching you. Sure. Like literally, it's exactly how it's being used these days. So it's more about allowing for the ideas and thoughts of your people. See, because I may be a 20-year veteran of something, and I may have somebody that's brand spanking new, but you know what? They've got youth, they've got ideas, they've got energy, they've got different things. So we might actually, get into a dialogue where we figure things out, or I allow for their inputs and they allow for my experience, and together we actually try a few things as far as that's concerned. Now, the one argument against this that I see from people is they go, yeah, but what if you don't have enough time? Listen, you got deliverables. It's like, okay, so there's ways to do that where you'd say, well, here's the thing, do you trust me? And they go, well, yeah, I suppose. Well, I'll tell you what, let's try it here. And at the end of the day, let's circle back and I'll tell you what I was thinking about it. And I'd really like to get what you were thinking about it, because we've got to get this off to that company like in the next half hour.
That's awesome.
Okay, that sounds good. As long as I circle back and take that 5 minutes at the end of the day, then all of a sudden we can actually grow based on that. So it's not just me pulling rank all the time. We're in a situation where it really is far more of a collaborative thing. And if I actually take a genuine interest in your training, growth, and development, which is also, later we'll get to the framework and all that, but that's part of that. It makes a big difference as far as it's concerned.
All right. So in our next sit down, we're going to talk about how we allow for those relationships to grow. We're going to build on this subject as we continue to go. Is there anything that you want to say here, Michael, just to sort of wrap up this Light Bright session?
Sure. So because it gets so hairy, the reason people go to this thing called a machine, okay, is because in the short term, it feels like there's some semblance of control. And initially, an ecosystem looks pretty overwhelming. But if you can break down the pieces and you just take it one at a time and you work your way through it, I've actually identified 7 different pieces, and we'll actually do this over 7 different sessions. We'll talk about the pieces, and it's like it is doable. You just need to understand what are some of the dynamics that are playing with that as far as that side of it's concerned. And if I can understand, see, because the other side of this, there is another half of this, and that's, we need to understand human behavior at a different level.
Yeah.
Because it's only if we understand the dynamics of human behavior and what is actually constantly at play, that takes a lot of the fear or overwhelm of an ecosystem. It actually takes, and okay, you know what? They're just concerned about this or this or that. I understand that. Now I know what they need. If I don't understand the elements of human behavior, and we all are clear that we understand human behavior, and most of us, I'd say almost all of us, don't really understand human behavior. So the more you get to just some basics and you just see how much those basics play in every single decision that we make, and you start including those factors, it actually becomes a lot easier than people expect. I routinely will have people, I have one client, they were $12 million engineering firm, $12 million a year. And as they went from 12 to 13 and a half, they were in a situation where their profit margins started to go away. And these were really good people that were really, really highly regarded in the marketplace. And they're wondering what happened. And really what it was there's dynamics in human behavior that are starting to make it even more complex than it had been before. And as they learned and understood some of the aspects of human behavior, they made some structural adjustments that honored people rather than constrained them. And all of a sudden, you can tell very quickly what makes the difference. And as a result, it went very smoothly.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to talk about peeling the onion on all of those things through the 7 steps that are coming up. Michael, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
What a great way to continue this series with Michael Walsh. Today, we explored how a simple grid of 100 dots can unlock a profound truth. Relationships, not just roles or resources, are what truly scale inside an organization. And when we design with that in mind, freedom isn't a dream, it becomes inevitable. So let's take a moment to reflect on some things from this episode. Relationships scale faster than people. The number of one-on-one connections grows exponentially with your team. Scale relationships, not just headcount. Design systems that support human connection. Structure isn't the enemy of freedom, it's the path to it. Create intentional rhythms of connection. Visual thinking sparks strategic insight. Sometimes the most powerful strategies start with a sketch. Don't underestimate the napkin. Freedom comes from design, not absence. Joy and impact come from designing systems that reduce friction and amplify intention. Your leadership is the first dot. You are the starting point. How you show up influences every connection in your organization. If you're ready to reclaim your time, impact, and joy, this is your invitation to start designing your leadership, your company, and your freedom more intentionally. If this episode sparks something in you, subscribe to Paper Napkin Wisdom on your favorite platform. Leave us a review. It helps us reach more leaders like you. And share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And most importantly, sketch your takeaway from today's episode on a napkin. Take a picture and share it with the hashtag Paper Napkin Wisdom. What's one relationship that you need to build or rebuild with intention this week? Because ideas are powerful, but action, that's what changes everything. Make it a great day.